Some secrets rust slowly, hidden beneath decades of silence. Others wait like dormant storms, gathering strength in the shadows. The old airport stood defiant against time, a relic from when men with calloused hands still fixed what was broken. Outside, dark clouds gathered in formations too perfect to be natural, their edges sharp as surgical steel against the fading blue. They say you can't control the weather. They're wrong. For 30 years, the warning signs were buried in classified files and forgotten bunkers. Now the sky itself has become a weapon invisible, unstoppable, and in the wrong hands. Two aging warriors, once young soldiers on opposite sides of a buried truth, find themselves thrown together by a damaged aircraft and an emergency landing that was never an accident. Some battles you fight in your prime, others find you when your knees ache and your children have children of their own. But the most dangerous fights are the ones you thought were already won. As thunder rolls overhead with mechanical precision, the storm that's been building for 3 decades is finally breaking, and this time, there's nowhere to take shelter. The battered toolbox hadn't changed in 30 years. Steel frame dented from countless jobs. Red paint faded to a rust-like hue. The name Harmon stenciled on the side in blocky white letters that refused to fade. Jack Harmon ran weathered fingers over its surface, feeling each scratch and dent like reading Braille, a tactile history of his life's work. Dawn broke over Silver Creek Regional Airport, painting the sky in watercolors of amber and violet. At 62, Jack had seen more sunrises from this weathered hangar than from his own bedroom. The small airport, once a buzzing hub for local aviation enthusiasts, now stood as a fading monument to better days. Like many small airports across the Midwest in 2008, Silver Creek teetered on the edge of financial collapse, another casualty of the economic tsunami sweeping America. "Morning, boss," called Frank Miller, the 70-year-old ground operations manager, his voice carrying the gravelly texture of too many cigarettes and not enough sleep. "Coffee's hot, mail's cold, and Jenkins called. Said his Cessna's making that whining noise again." Jack smiled despite himself. "That whining noise is probably just Jenkins. Man complains more than his plane does." The familiar rhythm of airport life had barely begun when Jack's cell phone vibrated against his hip. The caller ID displayed Sunnybrook Care Center, and his heart sank. "Third call this week. Mr. Harmon, it's Nurse Patel from Sunnybrook. Your mother had another episode this morning. She doesn't recognize any of the staff and became agitated during breakfast. We had to administer a mild sedative." Jack closed his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'll be there in an hour." He'd barely hung up when his phone chimed with an email notification. Opening it revealed his daughter's college tuition bill, $12,500 for the upcoming semester at Northwestern. Jack stared at the number, feeling the weight of it pressing down on his shoulders like a physical burden. "Bad news," Frank asked, handing him a chipped mug of coffee. "Just life," Jack replied, taking a grateful sip. "Mom's having a rough morning, and Emily's tuition is due next week." Frank nodded in understanding. "You ever think about selling this place? That developer's been sniffing around again. Heard he upped his offer." Jack's gaze swept across the hangar, the wall of meticulously organized tools, the photographs of aircraft he'd restored over decades, the small office where his late wife Diane had handled the books until cancer took her 5 years ago. "This place isn't just an airport. Frank, it's—" The crackle of the radio interrupted him, the voice on the other end tense and clipped. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Gulfstream N800WA declaring emergency. Multiple system failures. 20 miles northwest of Silver Creek. Request immediate landing clearance." Frank rushed to the radio while Jack moved toward the hangar door, scanning the clear morning sky. The familiar rush of adrenaline, honed by years of emergency landings during his military service, flooded his system. "Roger, N800WA, Silver Creek Municipal. You are cleared to land runway 29. Winds calm. Altimeter 30.12. Emergency services standing by." Frank's voice shifted seamlessly into the professional calm of a veteran controller. In the distance, A sleek silhouette appeared too large and too fast for Silver Creek's modest runway. Jack grabbed his binoculars, focusing on the approaching aircraft. The Gulfstream G800, one of the newest and most sophisticated business jets in the world, was descending at an angle that made Jack's stomach tighten. "That approach is too steep," he muttered, "and their flaps aren't extending properly." The aircraft's landing lights flickered erratically, a clear indication of electrical problems. Jack grabbed his radio. "800 WA, this is Silver Creek ground. Be advised your approach angle is excessive and your flaps appear non-responsive. Recommend reduce descent rate immediately." There was a moment of silence before a woman's voice, tense but controlled, responded. "Silver Creek, this is N800 WA. Pilot is incapacitated. This is Victoria Westfield. Passenger. I have flight experience but limited G800 time. Auto systems are failing. I need guidance." Jack's mind raced. A novice pilot trying to land a $70 million aircraft with failing systems during an electrical malfunction. He glanced at the weather radar and felt his blood chill. The clear skies were deceptive. A massive storm front was moving in from the west, less than 30 minutes out. "Miss Westfield, this is Jack Harmon, Silver Creek chief mechanic and former military pilot. I need you to listen carefully. Your aircraft is experiencing cascading electrical failure. Can you reach the circuit breaker panel on the co-pilot side?" "Affirmative. Look for the row labeled main bus. You'll need to reset those breakers." Over the next tense minutes, Jack talked the woman through emergency procedures, his calm voice belying the gravity of the situation. The Gulfstream continued its descent, now surrounded by the eerie flickering of malfunctioning exterior lights. "Silver Creek, I've reset the breakers, but systems are still failing. Flight controls are increasingly sluggish." The woman's voice remained remarkably steady. "Wind shear," Frank suddenly shouted, pointing at the weather radar. "That storm front is pushing in faster than predicted." Jack made a split-second decision. "Ms. Westfield, abort standard approach. We're going to bring you in from the east. The runway's shorter from that direction, but you'll avoid the wind shear." "Understood. Turning now." The massive aircraft banked left, engines howling as it fought against increasingly violent air currents. Jack watched through his binoculars as the Gulfstream shuddered in the turbulence. "You're doing great," he encouraged, even as he saw lightning flash in the distance. "Now, when you're 3 miles out, I want you to drop your landing gear manually. There's a red handle by your right knee." The storm's leading edge reached them just as the Gulfstream lined up with the runway. Rain lashed the tarmac, reducing visibility to mere yards. Jack sprinted through the downpour toward the runway's edge, his aging joints protesting every step. "I don't have full flaps," Victoria's voice crackled through the handheld radio. "Touchdown speed will be hot. Cut power earlier than normal," Jack instructed, rain streaming down his face. "As soon as your wheels touch, maximum braking. You'll have to bleed off speed quickly." The Gulfstream emerged from the rain curtain like a ghost, its massive form floating toward the runway at a speed that made Jack's heart race. The jet touched down with a screech of rubber against wet concrete, its tires sending up plumes of spray. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the aircraft would run out of runway. Then, miraculously, it slowed, coming to rest less than 100 feet from the end of the tarmac. Jack ran toward it, ignoring the rain and the protest of his right knee, a souvenir from Desert Storm that reminded him of its presence every time the weather changed. The Gulfstream's main door opened, stairs extending automatically. A woman emerged tall, with silver-streaked dark hair cut in a no-nonsense bob. Despite the emergency landing, her charcoal suit remained impeccable, though her white-knuckled grip on the handrail betrayed her tension. "Victoria Westfield," she said, extending her hand as Jack approached. "I assume you're the voice from the radio, Jack Harmon," he confirmed, shaking her hand and noting the firmness of her grip. "That was some impressive flying, Ms. Westfield." "Vicky," she corrected, her professional facade cracking slightly to reveal exhaustion beneath. "And I had an excellent coach." She glanced back at the aircraft. My pilot, he just collapsed. Heart attack, I think. Is there medical help? Jack nodded, already speaking into his radio. Within minutes, paramedics were loading the unconscious pilot into an ambulance while Jack led Vicky toward the shelter of the hangar. Her composed demeanor faltered only once when lightning struck nearby, causing her to flinch. Military, Jack asked, recognizing the disciplined response to crisis. Vicky shot him a measured look. Air Force, F-16s. You, Army, aviation maintenance and recovery, Blackhawks mostly. They reached the hangar just as the sky opened up completely, rain hammering the metal roof like machine gun fire. Jack handed her a towel and a mug of hot coffee, noting how she scanned the hangar with a tactician's eye assessing exits, noting positions, evaluating threats. Thank you for the assist, she said formally. I need to make some calls. Then we should discuss repairing my aircraft. Jack raised an eyebrow. That jet needs more than repairs, Ms. Westfield. It needs a complete electrical diagnostic at a certified Gulfstream service center. Which is why I need you to make it flight-worthy within 3 days, she replied, her tone making it clear this was not a request. Jack laughed, a short bark of disbelief. 3 days with all due respect, that's impossible. The diagnostics alone would take. I'm aware of the standard timeline. Mr. Harmon, Vicky's voice cooled several degrees. I'm also aware that you implemented field repairs on damaged Blackhawks during Operation Desert Storm that manufacturer representatives deemed impossible until you proved them wrong. Jack stiffened. You've done your homework. I make it a point to know who I'm dealing with. She sipped her coffee, eyes never leaving his. Westfield Aerospace needs that aircraft operational for a board meeting in New York in 3 days, a meeting that will determine whether I remain CEO or get forced into early retirement by a board that thinks 58 is too old to run a multi-billion-dollar company. And you landed here by accident, Jack said skeptically. The emergency was genuine. The location, she paused. Let's call it fortunate coincidence. Your reputation in aviation circles is not insignificant. Mr. Harmon, Jack crossed his arms. So I'm supposed to perform a miracle on your jet because some corporate sharks want to force you out. Vicky's expression hardened. You're supposed to perform a miracle because I'll pay you $250,000 to do it. The sum hung in the air between them. Jack thought of his mother's care facility bills, his daughter's tuition, the airport's mounting debts. I'll need to inspect the aircraft first, he said finally. No promises until I know what I'm dealing with. Fair enough. Vicky's phone buzzed, and she checked it with a frown. My security team will be here within the hour. I suggest you begin your inspection before they arrive. They're rather protective of company property. Jack grabbed his toolbox and headed toward the Gulfstream, feeling like he'd just made a deal with a particularly dangerous kind of devil. The rain had subsided by the time Jack climbed into the Gulfstream's main cabin. The interior screamed wealth and power cream leather seats, polished wood surfaces, and technology that would make NASA envious. But Jack's focus was on the aircraft's systems, not its luxuries. He made his way to the cockpit, where the sophisticated avionics suite lay dark and silent. This was cutting-edge technology, far beyond the equipment he typically worked with at Silver Creek. Jack pulled a flashlight from his toolbox and began methodically examining access panels, tracing wiring routes, and checking circuit breakers. 2 hours into his inspection, Jack found something that made him pause. Behind a panel near the avionics bay, a small device was attached to the main electrical bus, something that definitely wasn't part of the factory configuration. Find anything interesting? Vicky's voice came from directly behind him, causing Jack to start. You move quietly for someone in heels, he observed, not turning around. Old habits. She moved beside him, peering at the open panel. What is it? Jack carefully extracted the device smaller than a pack of cigarettes, with a microprocessor and a transmitter of some kind. This isn't standard equipment. It's aftermarket, and it's been installed to monitor or possibly interfere with your electrical systems. Vicky's expression didn't change, but Jack noticed her shoulders tense. Someone bugged my plane. Not just bugged, this could potentially take control of critical systems remotely. Jack turned the device over in his hands. This isn't amateur hour. This is military-grade tech. You're certain? Jack gave her a flat look. I spent 20 years identifying and neutralizing similar devices in combat zones. Yes, I'm certain. Vicky took the device, examining it carefully. This changes things. I need to make some calls. She turned to leave, then paused. Keep this between us for now. My security team doesn't need to know. You don't trust your own security? Jack asked, his suspicion rising. I don't trust anyone until I know who planted this, she replied. Except, perhaps, since you just found the evidence that someone's trying to kill me. After she left, Jack continued his inspection with renewed focus and growing concern. By the time Vicky's security team arrived, 4 men with military haircuts and concealed weapons poorly hidden under tailored suits, he had discovered 2 more monitoring devices and had developed a pretty good idea of how the aircraft's systems had been compromised. The head of security, a granite-faced man named Collins, immediately tried to assert control. This area is now restricted. Mr. Harmon will take over the inspection. Jack didn't look up from the circuit board he was examining. You touch my tools, you'll pull back a stump. Collins stepped forward menacingly, but Vicky's voice cut through the tension. Mr. Collins, Mr. Harmon is our contractor and has full access to the aircraft. Your team will provide security, not interference. The man backed down reluctantly, but the message was clear. Jack was an outsider, tolerated but not trusted. By evening, Jack had completed his initial assessment. He found Vicky in the small airport office, engaged in a tense phone conversation. When she saw him, she quickly ended the call. Well, she asked. Jack placed his diagnostic report on the desk. Someone has systematically compromised your aircraft's electrical system. The primary flight control computers have been modified to accept external commands, and there's evidence that the autopilot can be overridden remotely. Vicky's expression remained carefully neutral. Can you fix it? I can, but not in 3 days, Jack said. This needs a complete rewiring of critical systems and a full software purge. We're talking weeks, not days. She leaned forward. What if I told you that this meeting isn't just about my job, that there are people on my board planning to use my company's technology for applications? I specifically prohibited applications that could have devastating consequences. I'd say that sounds like a corporate problem, not my problem, Jack replied, though something in her intensity gave him pause. What if I told you these applications involve weaponizing weather patterns, technology you helped develop during your military service? Jack felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. That program was shut down decades ago. The environmental risks were too great. Tell that to Robert Whitmore. The name hit Jack like a physical blow. General Robert Whitmore, his former commanding officer, and the man who had pushed hardest for the atmospheric modification program, codenamed Olympus. The man Jack had publicly opposed, effectively ending his military career. Whitmore's on your board, Jack asked, connecting dots he didn't want to connect. He's trying to become chairman, Vicky confirmed. And if I miss this meeting, he likely will. The vote's going to be close. Jack ran a hand through his gray hair, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on him. You didn't land here by coincidence at all, did you? Vicky met his gaze directly. The emergency was real. The choice of where to land was informed. I needed someone who understood what's at stake, someone who's fought Whitmore before. Before Jack could respond, his phone rang Sunnybrook Care Center again. His mother had another episode, more severe this time. They needed him there immediately. I have to go, he said, gathering his things. Family emergency. I understand family obligations. Mr. Harmon, Vicky said, her voice softening slightly. But I need your answer. Will you help me? Jack paused at the door. I'll think about it. But right now, My mother needs me more than your corporate war does. The drive to Sunnybrook took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of memories Jack would rather have forgotten. Olympus had been cutting-edge research in the early 90s, the theoretical ability to modify weather patterns for military applications. Jack had been brought in as a systems specialist, only to discover the potential environmental devastation such technology could cause. His whistleblowing had earned him an honorable discharge and Whitmore's undying enmity. At Sunnybrook, he found his mother in the throes of confusion, her mind lost in the fog of Alzheimer's. Margaret Harmon, once a sharp-minded mathematics professor, now struggled to recognize her own son. James, she called him, mistaking him for his late father. The storm's coming. Did you secure the hangar? Everything's secure, Mom, Jack assured her, holding her fragile hand. Just a little rain, that's all. No, she insisted, her eyes suddenly clear and focused. Not rain. They're bringing back the program. I heard them talking. Jack froze. What program? Mom Olympus, she whispered, gripping his hand with surprising strength. They never really shut it down. James, they just hit it better. A chill ran down Jack's spine. His mother had worked as a civilian analyst on early weather modeling systems for the military. She had been part of the original theoretical framework for Olympus. But that was decades ago, and her mind was no longer reliable. Who's talking about it? Mom, he asked gently. The men in the silver plane, she said, her lucidity already fading. They come to the field sometimes. They think no one sees them. By the time Jack left Sunnybrook, night had fallen completely. His mother's words, though likely just confusion, had planted a seed of unease. He decided to take a detour on his way home, driving past the abandoned north runway at Silver Creek, a relic from the airport's busier days, now overgrown and unused. As he cut his headlights and coasted to a stop near the old control tower, Jack noticed fresh tire tracks in the mud too deep for ordinary vehicles, suggesting heavy equipment. And there, at the far end of the abandoned runway, a faint light flickered briefly in the old maintenance bunker that hadn't been used in years. Jack was about to investigate when his phone buzzed with a text from Frank. Came back to check hangar. Men asking questions about you. Not Westfield's people. Careful. Instinct took over. Jack backed his truck away slowly, lights still off, and took the long way home, checking his rear-view mirror frequently for followers. His modest house, once a happy family home, now a too-quiet reminder of his losses, looked undisturbed when he arrived. Nevertheless, he approached cautiously, right hand resting near the small of his back, where he still carried his service pistol. The house was clear, but Jack's military-honed instincts remained on high alert. He checked his security system, then pulled out his old footlocker from the bedroom closet. Inside, past medals and faded photographs, lay a satellite phone he'd kept from his service days, untraceable and secure. He dialed a number from memory, holding his breath as it rang. This better be good, growled a voice on the other end. Martinez. It's Harmon. A pause. Jack, Jesus. It's been what? 15 years. I need information on General Robert Whitmore. Current activities, associates, anything you can get me. Colonel Diego Martinez had been Jack's closest ally during the Olympus controversy, one of the few who had stood by him when he challenged Whitmore. Whitmore? Martinez sounded wary. He's big-time private sector now. Sits on multiple boards. Has friends in Washington. Why are you poking that hornet's nest? Because I think he's trying to resurrect Olympus. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Martinez said, give me 24 hours, and Jack, watch your six. Whitmore never forgave you for Desert Storm. Jack slept fitfully, his dreams filled with swirling storm clouds and the sound of helicopter rotors. He awoke at dawn to his phone vibrating on the nightstand, a text from a number he didn't recognize. Don't trust security team. Meet me at hangar 6 a.m. Toriti. The morning air was crisp and clear as Jack drove through the airport gates, the storm having moved east overnight. Silver Creek looked peaceful in the early light, belying the tension Jack felt building like a thunderhead on the horizon. Hangar 3 stood open, the Gulf Stream gleaming inside. Jack parked his truck and approached cautiously. Toolbox in hand, Vicky emerged from the shadows, dressed in jeans and a simple blue shirt, a stark contrast to yesterday's executive attire. "I swept the hangar for bugs," she said without preamble. "It's clean. For now." "Your security team?" Jack asked. "At the hotel, Collins reports directly to Whitmore. I've known that for months, but kept him close to feed him selected information." She held up a tablet. "These came in overnight from my contact at the FAA. Flight logs showing unregistered aircraft activity near Silver Creek over the past 6 months." Jack studied the data, his unease growing. "Silver Creek doesn't have the equipment to track these flights." "No, but the military base 80 miles west does," Vicky said. "Someone's been very interested in your little airport. Mr. Harmon." Jack thought of the tire tracks he'd seen last night, of his mother's confused warnings. "The north runway," and he said, "There's been activity there recently." Vicky's expression sharpened. "Show me." They took Jack's truck, driving around the perimeter of the active airport to the abandoned section that had been closed for over a decade. In daylight, the evidence was clearer: multiple vehicle tracks, recently disturbed earth near the old maintenance bunker, and most tellingly, fresh bolt cutters marks on the padlock. "Someone's been busy," Jack observed, examining the lock. "And they didn't care much about being subtle." "Wait," Vicky said suddenly, grabbing his arm. "Listen." In the distance, the distinctive sound of approaching vehicles echoed across the empty tarmac. Jack pulled Vicky behind the bunker just as two black SUVs appeared, driving slowly along the abandoned runway. "Collins," Vicky whispered, recognizing her head of security in the lead vehicle. Jack peered around the edge of the bunker, watching as the men exited their vehicles and approached the same maintenance bunker they were hiding behind. He pulled Vicky lower, both of them crouching behind rusted equipment as footsteps approached. "Whitmore wants this site secured today," Collins was saying to someone on the phone. "The old monitoring equipment needs to be operational before the board meeting." "Yes, I understand the timeline is tight, but we've waited 30 years to restart this program. I'm not letting some washed-up mechanic and a CEO Pastor Prime stand in our way." Jack felt Vicky tense beside him, her hand instinctively moving toward where a sidearm would be if she were still in uniform. He caught her wrist, shaking his head in warning. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Collins and his team entered the bunker, the heavy door closing behind them. Jack signaled to Vicky, and they crept back to his truck, keeping low and using the overgrown brush as cover. "Monitoring equipment," Jack said once they were safely driving away. Olympus had monitoring stations at strategic locations across the country. Silver Creek must have been one of them, which explains why Whitmore's been trying to buy this airport for years, Vicky added, the pieces falling into place. "The original equipment must still be here, hidden somewhere." Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Not somewhere. I know exactly where it would be." He drove directly to the main hangar, parking around back where they wouldn't be visible from the road. Inside, Frank was already at work, startled by their sudden appearance. "Jack, what's going on? Those men were back this morning asking—" "No time, Frank," Jack interrupted. "I need access to the old storage room, the one beneath the office." Frank's eyes widened. "Your father's old room, nobody's been down there in years." "That's what everyone was meant to think," Jack said grimly. The storage room was actually a small bunker beneath the main office, accessible through a trap door hidden under a heavy metal desk. Jack's father, the original owner of Silver Creek, had built it during the Cold War as a civil defense shelter. But as Jack had long suspected, its purpose had evolved over the years. The heavy trap door creaked open, revealing a steep set of metal stairs descending into darkness. Jack led the way, flashlight in hand, Vicky close behind. The air below was stale but dry, preserved by a dehumidification system that had somehow remained operational all these years. "My God," Vicky breathed as Jack's flashlight illuminated the room. Banks of equipment lined the walls outdated by current standards, but recognizable to both of them as military-grade atmospheric monitoring systems. In the center stood a massive computer array, its displays dark but LEDs on the main console still blinking, indicating standby mode. Olympus Station 7, Jack said, reading the faded label on the central console. One of 12 monitoring stations strategically positioned to track atmospheric conditions and test small-scale weather modification. How did this end up under your airport? Vicky asked. My father was Army Corps of Engineers before he bought this place, Jack explained, running his hand over the dusty equipment. He never talked about his classified work, but I always suspected he remained connected to military projects. This must have been his assignment maintaining this station in secret. Jack approached the main console, muscle memory guiding his hands to what should have been a startup sequence. To his surprise, the system responded. Ancient hard drives whirring to life, screens flickering with green text on black backgrounds. It's still operational, he murmured in disbelief. And about to become active again if Whitmore has his way, Vicky added, examining a rack of more modern equipment that had been installed alongside the original systems. These are new high-capacity data processing units. Someone's been upgrading this station recently. Jack accessed the system logs, scrolling through data that brought back uncomfortable memories. According to this, the system has been pinged remotely every month for the past year. Diagnostic checks, mostly, but 3 days ago, it received a full activation protocol. The same day my plane was sabotaged, Vicky said. This is bigger than your board meeting, Jack said, the realization dawning with chilling clarity. Whitmore isn't just trying to restart research he's ready to deploy. These stations were designed to work in concert, creating a network that could theoretically influence weather patterns over specific targets. Vicky's expression hardened. My company's atmospheric research was meant for climate change mitigation and natural disaster prevention. Not this. Whitmore never cared about the benevolent applications, Jack said, accessing deeper levels of the system. During Desert Storm, he wanted to use prototype technology to create massive sandstorms to blind Iraqi forces. The environmental impact studies showed potential for triggering decades of climate disruption across the entire Middle East. A sudden noise from above made them both freeze. Footsteps moved across the office floor, directly over the hidden trapdoor. We need to move, Jack whispered, quickly shutting down the console. There's a secondary exit ventilation tunnel that leads to the old fuel depot. They had just reached the narrow tunnel when the trapdoor crashed open above them. Jack pushed Vicky into the darkness of the tunnel, following close behind as voices echoed in the bunker. Someone's been here, came Colin's voice. The system's been accessed recently. Find them, ordered another voice, older, authoritative, and hauntingly familiar to Jack. Harmon knows too much already. General Robert Whitmore had arrived at Silver Creek. The ventilation tunnel was narrow and choked with decades of dust, forcing Jack and Vicky to crawl through near-total darkness. Jack led the way, guided by memories of exploring these passages as a teenager, when his father had explicitly forbidden him from entering the storage room. They emerged behind the old fuel depot, a small building several hundred yards from the main hangar. Jack helped Vicky out of the tunnel, both of them covered in dirt and cobwebs. We need to get back to your plane, Jack said, orienting himself. If Whitmore is here personally, things are accelerating faster than I thought. The plane can wait, Vicky countered. We need evidence of what Whitmore is planning. Something concrete we can take to the authorities. And who exactly would we take it to? Jack asked. Whitmore has connections throughout the military and government. That's how Olympus stayed hidden all these years despite officially being shut down. A shout from the direction of the main hangar told them they'd been spotted. Two of Colin's men were pointing in their direction, already moving toward them. Run, Jack said, grabbing Vicky's arm and pulling her toward the maintenance sheds. There's a Cessna on the east tarmac. Frank keeps the keys in the ignition. They sprinted across open ground, Jack ignoring the protest from his bad knee as bullets pinged off metal structures around them. Vicky kept pace easily, her military training evident in her movement and breathing control. They reached the maintenance shed, ducking inside just as more shots rang out. Jack grabbed a heavy wrench from a workbench and handed it to Vicky, then picked up a crowbar for himself. "Like old times," Vicky remarked, testing the weight of the wrench. "You've done this before?" Jack asked. Surprised, a ghost of a smile crossed her face. "You're not the only one with a colorful military history. Harmon." A shadow appeared in the doorway. Jack swung the crowbar, connecting with the security man's arm and sending his weapon clattering to the floor. Vicky moved in perfect coordination, delivering a precision strike to the man's solar plexus that left him gasping on the ground. They burst from the shed and continued toward the small Cessna 172 parked at the edge of the tarmac. More security personnel were converging from multiple directions. "We'll never make it to the Cessna," Vicky said, assessing the situation with tactical precision. Jack pointed to an aircraft tug, the small but powerful vehicle used to move planes around the tarmac. "Plan B." They reached the tug just as bullets began striking the ground at their feet. Jack hot-wired the ignition in seconds, the small vehicle roaring to life. Vicky jumped on the back as Jack slammed the accelerator, the tug lurching forward with surprising speed. They careened across the tarmac, security vehicles in pursuit. Jack drove straight for the fuel truck parked near the main hangar. "Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking," Vicky shouted over the engine noise. "I'm just creating a distraction," Jack called back, aiming the tug directly at the truck before jumping clear. Vicky leapt from the other side, both of them rolling across the tarmac as the unmanned tug slammed into the fuel truck. The collision wasn't hard enough to cause an explosion, but it created enough of a scene to draw attention. In the confusion, Jack and Vicky slipped into the main hangar through a side entrance, finding themselves face to face with Frank. "What the hell is going on?" the old ground manager demanded. "There are armed men all over my airport." "No time to explain," Jack said, moving toward the Gulfstream. "I need the keys to your truck, and I need you to create another distraction in about 2 minutes." Frank looked between Jack and Vicky, then reached into his pocket and handed over his keys. "Whatever you're into, it better be worth it." "It is," Vicky assured him. "Your friend here is trying to save a lot of lives." While Frank headed off to create their distraction, Jack and Vicky quickly assessed the Gulfstream. The access panels Jack had opened during his inspection remained untouched, giving him an idea. "I can't fix your plane in time for your meeting," he told Vicky, "but I can make Whitmore think I'm trying to." He reached into the open panel and quickly disconnected several key components, making the damage appear worse than it was. If they think the plane is completely disabled, they might let their guard down. "And then what?" Vicky asked. "Whitmore isn't going to just give up and go home." "No," Jack agreed, closing the panel. "But now we know what he's after. The monitoring station is the key to whatever he's planning. We need to access the main system and extract the activation protocols he's been uploading." "That's suicide," Vicky said. "The bunker is probably crawling with his men by now." "Not the bunker," Jack corrected. "The backup terminal." Every Olympus station had a secondary access point, something only the original engineers would know about. Outside, a series of loud explosions erupted Frank's distraction, likely involving the emergency flares stored in the pilot's lounge. Security personnel rushed toward the commotion, giving Jack and Vicky their opening. They slipped out of the hangar and into Frank's truck, driving away from the airport as casually as possible while chaos erupted behind them. Jack took a circuitous route, ensuring they weren't followed before heading toward his home. "The backup terminal is in your house?" Vicky asked incredulously. "Not exactly," Jack replied, turning onto a narrow dirt road that led into the woods beyond his property. "It's in my father's workshop." The small building was nearly invisible among the trees, a simple structure that appeared to be nothing more than a woodworking shop. Inside, and beneath decades of sawdust and abandoned projects, lay another secret from Jack's family past. He moved a heavy workbench aside, revealing a trap door similar to the one at the airport. This one, however, was equipped with a modern biometric lock. "Your father was thorough," Vicky observed. "You have no idea," Jack muttered, placing his palm on the scanner. To his surprise, the system accepted his print, the lock disengaging with a soft click. Below, a small room contained a simplified version of the monitoring station's control system designed for emergency access, should the main bunker be compromised. "I never knew this was here," Jack admitted, powering up the equipment. "My father died before he could tell me about any of this." "How did you know to look here?" Vicky asked. Jack hesitated, then said, "My mother, despite her condition, she said something yesterday about men in silver planes coming to the field. I thought she was confused, mixing up past and present, but she wasn't. She was trying to warn me." The terminal came online, connecting automatically to the main system at the airport. Jack navigated through the unfamiliar interface, decades-old training slowly returning. "There," he said, pointing to a file directory labeled Current Protocols. "That's what we need." As Jack began downloading the files to a portable drive, Vicky's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression growing grim. "Whitmore has called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Not the day after as scheduled. He's making his move early." "Then we need to move faster," Jack said, watching the download progress frustratingly slowly on the outdated system. "Once we have these files, we'll know exactly what he's planning." The download completed just as they heard vehicles approaching through the woods. Jack grabbed the drive and powered down the terminal, closing the trap door and replacing the workbench. "They found us," Vicky said, peering through a dusty window. "2 SUVs, at least 6 men." Jack handed her the drive. "Take this. There's a trail out back that leads to the highway. My daughter Emily knows someone at the FBI's cybercrime division. Her number's in my phone." "What about you?" Vicky demanded. "I'll delay them," Jack said, pulling out his service pistol. "Give you time to get clear." "That's not happening," Vicky said firmly, taking the gun from his hand. "I'm the better shot, and you know the escape route. You take the drive, I'll provide cover." Before Jack could argue, the door splintered inward, and Collins stepped through, weapon raised. "Hand over the drive," he ordered. "No one needs to get hurt here." "Funny," Vicky replied, raising Jack's pistol with military precision. "I was about to say the same thing to you." What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion. Collins fired, the bullet grazing Vicky's arm. She returned fire, her shot finding Collins' shoulder and spinning him backward. Jack grabbed a can of turpentine from a shelf and hurled it at the next man through the door, following it with his father's welding torch. The workshop erupted in flames, creating the diversion they needed. Jack pulled Vicky through a concealed back door as smoke filled the small building. They sprinted into the woods, the sound of pursuit close behind them. "You're hit," Jack said, noticing the blood on Vicky's sleeve. "Flesh wound," she replied tersely. "Keep moving." They navigated the dense forest, Jack leading them through hidden paths he'd known since childhood. The sounds of pursuit gradually faded, but they didn't slow their pace until they reached a small creek nearly a mile from the workshop. "We can follow this downstream," Jack said, helping Vicky across the slippery rocks. "There's an old hunting cabin another mile from here. We can regroup there." Vicky nodded, pressing a hand to her injured arm. The bleeding had slowed, but the pain was evident in her tightly controlled expression. "So," Jack said as they walked, trying to distract her from the pain, "you were Air Force when 1985 to 2001, she replied, stepping carefully over a fallen log. "One of the first female combat pilots, flew missions in Desert Storm." Jack stopped short, staring at her. "Desert Storm. What squadron?" 58th Tactical Fighter. Out of Al Dhafra." A memory flashed through Jack's mind, a young woman pilot who had helped evacuate his team after a particularly harrowing recovery mission south of Basra. He hadn't made the connection until now, but the cool competence, the precision under pressure. "You flew air cover for a downed Black Hawk recovery," he said slowly. "April 1991. Vicky's eyes widened in recognition. "That was your team," the crazy mechanics who recovered a helicopter while under enemy fire. Small world, Jack murmured, the connections multiplying in his mind. Is that how you knew about me, about my opposition to Olympus? In part, she admitted. But there's more to it. Whitmore didn't just want control of weather patterns for military applications. The technology has evolved. Climate manipulation has commercial applications, now controlling rainfall for agriculture, preventing hurricanes from hitting certain coastlines. Let me guess, Jack said grimly. Whoever controls the weather controls the insurance markets, agricultural futures, coastal real estate values, trillions in potential profit, Vicky confirmed. And Whitmore has investors lined up, just waiting for Westfield's technology to complete the system. My board meeting isn't just about my leadership, it's about voting on whether to approve the final components. They reached the hunting cabin as twilight settled over the forest. The small structure was rustic but secure, with no road access and limited visibility from the air. Jack found the hidden key and let them in, immediately checking the old ham radio his father had installed decades ago. We need to warn someone, Jack said, trying different frequencies. If what you're saying is true, Whitmore is planning to weaponize weather on a global scale. Who would believe us? Vicky asked, sinking into a chair, exhaustion finally showing through her composed exterior. We have the drive, but without context, it's just data. We need to get you to that board meeting, Jack decided. You said it yourself, the vote is what matters. If you can convince enough board members of what Whitmore is really planning, we might have a chance. My plane is grounded, remember? And even if it wasn't, Whitmore's people are watching the airport. Jack smiled for the first time in what felt like days. Who said anything about using your plane? The old ham radio crackled to life, a staticky voice responding to Jack's call sign. Jack, is that you? Old man? Rodriguez, Jack responded, relief evident in his voice. I need a favor, a big one. Miguel Rodriguez had been Jack's crew chief during Desert Storm, and now ran a private charter service 2 counties over. As Jack explained the situation in coded language they'd developed during the war, Vicky tended to her wound with supplies from the cabin's first aid kit. You're really going to trust your life to a restored warbird? She asked when Jack finished the call. Rodriguez maintains a fleet of vintage aircraft, Jack explained, including a former military transport that won't appear on any of Whitmore's monitoring systems. It's completely analog, no digital systems to hack or track. And how exactly are we going to get to this mystery plane, in case you haven't noticed? We're in the middle of nowhere with Whitmore's men between us and civilization. Jack pointed to a tarp-covered shape behind the cabin. My father believed in having exit strategies. Beneath the tarp sat an old but well-maintained ATV, perfect for navigating the forest trails that would lead them to a small private airstrip 20 miles away. Your father was quite the strategic thinker, Vicky observed. You have no idea, Jack replied, checking the ATV's fuel tank. He spent his entire life preparing for battles he hoped would never come. Now I understand why. As night fell completely, they prepared to move out. Jack's phone, which had been silent due to poor reception, suddenly buzzed with an incoming call. The display showed Emily, his daughter. Dad! Emily's voice was tense. Where are you? There are men at the house looking for you. They said there was some kind of accident at the airport. I'm safe, Jack assured her. But I need you to listen carefully. Remember your friend at the FBI, the one who specializes in cybercrime? Rachel, yes. But what's going on? I need you to contact her immediately. Tell her to look into unusual weather pattern monitoring activities associated with Westfield Aerospace and a man named Robert Whitmore. There's a major security threat in development. Dad, you're scaring me, Emily said, her voice dropping to a whisper. These men don't look like police. They're going through all your things. Stay away from the house, Jack said urgently. Go to Aunt Sarah's and lay low. I'll contact you when it's safe. After ending the call, Jack turned to find Vicky watching him, her expression unreadable. Your daughter, she said. You're risking everything for this. Some things are worth the risk, Jack replied simply. If Whitmore succeeds, the environmental damage could be catastrophic. This isn't just about your company or my airport anymore. Vicky nodded slowly. Then we better get moving. We have a board meeting to crash. They mounted the ATV, Jack at the controls with Vicky holding on behind him, and headed into the darkness of the forest. The drive would be treacherous, the risks enormous, but the stakes were too high for hesitation. As they navigated through the trees, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that his entire life, from his military service to his quiet years running a small airport, had been preparing him for this moment. His father's secrets, his own confrontation with Whitmore years ago, even meeting Vicky again after all this time. None of it felt like coincidence anymore. The storm that had been building on the horizon was about to break, and Jack Harmon was riding directly into it. The pre-dawn sky spread like spilled ink above the isolated airstrip where Rodriguez waited with his prized possession, a restored C-47 transport from the 1940s, its matte black fuselage nearly invisible against the darkness. The vintage aircraft represented a bygone era of aviation, a time before digital systems and satellite tracking. She ain't pretty, but she's invisible to modern tracking systems, Rodriguez said, patting the metal skin affectionately as Jack and Vicky approached. The former crew chief had aged into a stocky, gray-haired man with laugh lines around his eyes that did nothing to diminish his military bearing. "You're a lifesaver, Miguel," Jack said, embracing his old friend. Rodriguez eyed Vicky's makeshift bandage. "You two look like hell. First aid kit's on board, along with some clothes that might fit. Coffee in the thermos is still hot." As they climbed aboard, Rodriguez handed Jack a sealed envelope. "Guy named Martinez left this for you. Said you'd understand." Inside the aircraft, while Rodriguez prepared for takeoff, Jack opened the envelope. It contained a flash drive and a handwritten note. "Whitmore's been busy. All Olympus stations showing activation protocols. Whatever he's planning happens today. Security clearance codes enclosed. Watch the weather. M." "Your friend came through," Jack told Vicky, showing her the flash drive. "This gives us access to verify what's on our drive and potentially access the entire Olympus network." Vicky examined her arm in the dim cabin light, replacing her bandage with proper medical supplies. "The board meeting is at 9 a.m. Even with this aircraft, we'll be cutting it close." "We have another problem," Jack said, checking his watch. "My mother? If Whitmore is as thorough as I remember, he'll realize she might have information about the original program. She's vulnerable at that care facility." Vicky considered this, then pulled out her phone. "I still have people I trust. Give me the facility details." While Vicky arranged protection for Jack's mother, he connected Martinez's flash drive to his laptop, reviewing the files as the old aircraft rumbled down the runway and lifted into the dark sky. "This confirms everything," he said grimly as data scrolled across his screen. "Whitmore has reactivated all 12 original Olympus stations. The system is capable of creating targeted weather disturbances, everything from localized flooding to drought conditions. And Silver Creek is one of those stations." Jack nodded. "A critical one. Its location provides coverage for the eastern seaboard. Without it, the network has a significant blind spot, which explains why Whitmore was so determined to acquire your airport," Vicky concluded. "But why now? The technology was deemed too dangerous 30 years ago. What's changed?" "Computing power, for one thing," Jack said, scrolling through technical specifications. "The original models couldn't account for all the variables. The environmental blowback was unpredictable. But with modern supercomputers, he thinks he can control it," Vicky finished. "Precise, targeted weather manipulation with acceptable collateral damage." "There's no such thing as acceptable collateral damage when you're messing with global weather patterns," Jack retorted. "One significant disruption could trigger cascading effects that last decades." Rodriguez called back from the cockpit. "Weather report just came in. Unusual storm formations developing along the eastern seaboard. Nothing in the forecast predicted them." Jack and Vicky exchanged alarmed glances. "He's already started testing the system," Jack said. Moving to a window, in the growing light of dawn, he could see dark clouds forming to the east, their patterns too symmetrical, too organized to be natural. "How long until we reach New York?" Vicky asked Rodriguez. "At our current speed, just under 2 hours, puts us on the ground around 8:30 a.m. "Too close," she muttered. "And Whitmore will have people watching all the major airports." "We're not landing at a major airport," Rodriguez called back. "I've got clearance for a small private airstrip in New Jersey. Friend of mine owns it, no questions asked." Jack continued analyzing the data, his concern growing with each new file. "According to these projections, Whitmore is planning a demonstration today, something to convince potential investors and your board that the technology works as promised." "What kind of demonstration?" Vicky asked. Jack looked up, his expression grave. "A precisely targeted weather event over Manhattan. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to demonstrate control. A sudden thunderstorm appearing out of nowhere, directly over specific buildings, including Westfield headquarters," Vicky guessed, "where the board meeting is taking place." "It's theatrical," Jack admitted, "but effective. Imagine the impact Whitmore presents his case for weaponizing your atmospheric research. And right on cue, thunder rolls overhead. Perfect timing to force a favorable vote." Vicky paced the narrow cabin, her strategic mind working through options. "We need to approach this on two fronts. I need to get to that meeting to block the vote, while someone needs to disrupt the Olympus network." "Martinez is working on the network disruption," Jack said, holding up the flash drive. "But he needs specific access codes from each station to shut it down completely. Codes we can extract from the data we stole." "So we split up," Vicky decided. "I go to the board meeting. You get the codes to Martinez." Jack shook his head. "Whitmore will have security everywhere. Neither of us should go alone." "Then we need help," Vicky said, pulling out her phone again. "Someone inside Westfield who can get us past security." "Who can you trust at this point?" A small smile crossed Vicky's face. "My executive assistant, Helen, 73 years old, been with the company since before I was born. Whitmore thinks she's just a harmless old secretary, but she's been tracking his movements for months on my behalf." While Vicky made arrangements with her assistant, Jack continued analyzing the Olympus data. Something about the activation sequence bothered him, a familiar pattern in the code that triggered a distant memory. "Wait," he said suddenly. "I know this encryption algorithm. It was part of the original system, a fail-safe my mother helped design." "Your mother," Vicky paused her conversation. "The one with Alzheimer's before her illness. She was a mathematical genius," Jack explained. "She developed a backdoor shutdown protocol for the original Olympus system, a way to terminate the program if it ever went rogue. Whitmore never knew about it." "Would she remember it now?" Jack ran a hand through his gray hair. "On her good days, maybe, but those are increasingly rare." "We need to try," Vicky insisted. "If there's a chance she remembers that shutdown protocol, it could be our best option." Jack nodded reluctantly. "I'll call the facility when we land." But we still need to get into that board meeting. As the first rays of sunlight broke across the horizon, the vintage aircraft continued its journey toward New York, carrying two aging warriors about to face their greatest battle, one that would determine not just their futures, but potentially the climate stability of the entire planet. The small New Jersey airstrip emerged from the morning fog as Rodriguez began their descent. Unlike modern airports with their concrete vastness, this was little more than a grass runway and a couple of hangars, a relic from aviation's earlier days, much like the aircraft they were flying. "Ground transport is waiting," Rodriguez informed them as they touched down. "Helen arranged it. Black sedan by the main hangar." Sure enough, an unmarked car idled near the dilapidated building, its driver a woman in her 70s with a steel-gray bob and posture that would make a drill sergeant proud standing beside it. "Ms. Westfield," Helen greeted them as they approached, her crisp British accent unchanged by decades in America. "And you must be Mr. Harmon. You've both looked better." "Good to see you too, Helen," Vicky replied with genuine warmth. Status report. Whitmore arrived at headquarters an hour ago with 3 security teams. The board members are gathering. Your absence has been noted, and rumors of your unfortunate accident are already circulating. Helen handed them each a small package. Credentials, building passes, and clean clothes. The meeting room has been swept for bugs as you requested. And the other matter? Vicky asked. Helen's expression softened slightly. Your mother is secure. Mr. Harmon, 2 former Royal Marines friends of my late husband, are with her now. Whitmore's men tried to access the facility, but were firmly redirected. Jack felt a wave of relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Helen replied briskly. We still need to get you both into a heavily secured building where half the security staff is loyal to Whitmore. During the drive toward Manhattan, Jack contacted Sunnybrook, asking to speak with his mother. To his surprise, Margaret Harmon was having one of her lucid days. Jack, where are you? There are men here. They say they're protecting me. They are. Mom, friends of mine. Listen, I need to ask you about Olympus. A long pause followed. I always knew this day would come, she finally said, her voice stronger, more focused than it had been in months. James made me memorize the shutdown sequence, made me practice it every anniversary until the day he died. You remember it? Jack asked, hope rising. I remember everything about Olympus, she replied with surprising clarity. The access codes, the backup protocols, the mathematical models that predicted environmental collapse if the system was ever fully deployed. Mom, I need that shutdown sequence. Whitmore is reactivating the system. Whitmore, she spat the name. Your father never trusted him, said he valued power over people. She began reciting a complex series of alphanumeric codes, her voice steady, her recall perfect. Jack wrote frantically. Martinez's flash drive ready to receive the crucial information. One last thing, Margaret said as Jack finished transcribing. The sequence must be input simultaneously at 2 different stations. A fail-safe to prevent unauthorized shutdown. You'll need someone at a second location. Jack looked at Vicky. The implications clear. Mom, you're amazing. I'll see you soon. I promise. Be careful, Jack, his mother replied, a tremor returning to her voice as her lucidity began to fade. The storms are coming. As they ended the call, Helen maneuvered through increasingly heavy Manhattan traffic. Unusually dark clouds were gathering overhead, their formations too perfect, too controlled. He's starting, Jack said, watching the unnatural weather pattern develop. This is just the precursor to the demonstration he has planned for the board meeting. They reached Westfield Aerospace headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in Midtown with 45 minutes to spare. Helen guided them to a service entrance where a heavy-set security guard greeted her with a familiar nod. Morning, Ms. Prescott. Early meeting. Urgent preparations. Stanley, Helen replied smoothly. These are technical consultants for the presentation. The guard barely glanced at their credentials before waving them through a testament to Helen's established authority and the effectiveness of appearing to belong. Inside, Helen led them to a service elevator. This will take us to the executive floor without passing the main security checkpoint. But once we're up there, you'll be in plain sight. I need to reach a computer terminal with secure external access, Jack said. Somewhere I can transmit the shutdown sequence to Martinez. The backup server room on 43, Helen suggested. It's minimally staffed and has the connections you need. Vicky nodded decisively. Helen, take Jack to the server room. I'll head to the board meeting. Alone, Jack protested. Whitmore will have you arrested the moment you walk in. Not if I'm making an entrance, Vicky replied with grim determination. Whitmore thinks I'm either dead or scrambling to get back for this meeting. The last thing he'll expect is for me to walk in confidently as if nothing's wrong. Psychological warfare, Jack acknowledged, admiring her strategy despite his concerns. But once you're in, you're exposed. I only need to delay the vote until you can initiate the shutdown sequence, Vicky reminded him. After that, Whitmore's demonstration will fail, and his credibility will be questioned. They separated at the 43rd floor, Jack following Helen toward the server room while Vicky continued upward to the executive levels. Before parting, Vicky gripped Jack's arm. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "what we started at Silver Creek doesn't end today." The simple statement carried implications that neither had time to address. Jack nodded, understanding the promise behind her words. Then she was gone, the elevator doors closing between them. Helen led Jack through a maze of corridors, using her senior status to wave off questions from the few employees they encountered. The backup server room was tucked away in a corner of the building, its importance belied by its modest appearance. "I can get you in," Helen said, approaching the security panel. "But my clearance won't give you external access. You'll need to bypass those protocols yourself." "Leave that to me," Jack replied, thinking of the technical skills he'd honed during decades of solving complex mechanical problems. Computers might not be his primary expertise, but systems were systems, whether mechanical or digital. They all had vulnerabilities if you understood their fundamental architecture. Helen swiped her badge and entered a code, the door unlocking with a soft click. "I need to head upstairs to assist Victoria. Good luck, Mr. Harmon." Alone in the server room, Jack quickly located a workstation and connected Martinez's flash drive. The shutdown sequence his mother had provided would need to be transmitted to every Olympus station simultaneously, with manual confirmation from two separate locations. He established a secure connection to Martinez, who was positioned at a military cybersecurity facility thanks to his active security clearance. "I'm in position," Martinez confirmed via text, "waiting for your signal to initiate shutdown." "Saw one. Standing by," Jack replied. "Need to coordinate with the board meeting timeline." While waiting, Jack accessed the Olympus monitoring system using the credentials from the flash drive. What he saw chilled him to the bone. The weather patterns over Manhattan were already showing clear signs of manipulation, pressure differentials being artificially adjusted, wind patterns shifting in mathematically precise ways. This wasn't just a demonstration. It was a carefully orchestrated performance designed to showcase pinpoint atmospheric control. His phone vibrated a text from Vicky, "In position outside boardroom. Meeting in progress. Whitmore presenting. Thunder rolling on cue. Ready when you are." Jack typed a quick response to both Martinez and Vicky. "Initiating shutdown in 5 minutes. Be ready for confirmation prompt." He began the complex process of uploading the shutdown sequence, mentally counting down the minutes until Vicky would make her move. The boardroom of Westfield Aerospace occupied the entire top floor of the building, its floor-to-ceiling windows currently showcasing the unnaturally dark clouds gathering around the tower. Inside, Robert Whitmore stood before the assembled board members, his tall frame commanding attention despite his 72 years. His silver hair and impeccable uniform, he still dressed in a modified military style, projected authority and control. "Ladies and gentlemen," he was saying as Vicky listened outside the door, "what you're witnessing is merely a taste of what atmospheric regulation technology can accomplish. Precise, controlled weather modification, with applications ranging from agricultural enhancement to disaster prevention." Thunder rumbled overhead, perfectly timed to punctuate his statement. The board members murmured, impressed by the apparent correlation. "Imagine drought-stricken regions receiving exactly the rainfall they need." Whitmore continued. "Imagine hurricanes diverted from population centers. Imagine the market advantage for those who control this technology." Inside the room, Helen occupied her usual position by the door, her tablet ready to record the minutes. She caught Vicky's eye through the glass panel and gave an imperceptible nod. Vicky straightened her borrowed suit, took a deep breath, and pushed open the boardroom door. The reaction was immediate and gratifying. Whitmore froze mid-sentence, his composed facade cracking for just an instant to reveal genuine shock. Board members turned in their seats, gasps and murmurs rippling through the room. "Please continue, Robert," Vicky said pleasantly, striding to the head of the table as if this were any normal meeting. "I'm particularly interested in hearing about the environmental impact studies for this technology, the ones that show catastrophic climate disruption as a potential side effect." Victoria, Whitmore recovered quickly, his smile not reaching his eyes. We feared you'd been delayed by the unfortunate incidents at Silver Creek. How resourceful of you to make it. Silver Creek, Vicky repeated, looking around at the board members. An interesting location. Did Robert mention that it houses one of the original Olympus stations, a classified military weather modification program that was shut down 30 years ago due to environmental concerns? Confusion spread across the faces of the board members. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Victoria is understandably stressed, he said smoothly. The technology we're discussing today is purely civilian in application, developed independently by Westfield's research division. Is that why you tried to have me killed? Vicky asked bluntly. Is that why your security team sabotaged my aircraft? Why they pursued and shot at me? She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the bandaged bullet graze on her arm. Gasps echoed around the table. The board chairman, Edward Chen, rose to his feet. These are serious allegations. Victoria, do you have evidence? Abundant evidence, Vicky confirmed, including the original Olympus protocols that General Whitmore has been uploading to weather monitoring stations across the country, including the one hidden beneath Silver Creek Airport. Thunder boomed directly overhead, louder than before, as if emphasizing her words. The lights flickered momentarily. Impressive timing, Vicky noted dryly, almost as if someone were controlling the weather to manipulate this meeting. Whitmore's expression darkened. You're making a grave mistake. Victoria, this technology represents the future of Westfield Aerospace and national security. No, Vicky countered. You're weaponizing environmental research that was meant to mitigate climate change, not create targeted weather events that could destabilize global patterns. As they argued, Vicky subtly checked her watch. Jack's 5-minute countdown was nearly complete. She needed to keep Whitmore distracted just a little longer. Board members, she addressed the group directly. I'm asking you to postpone this vote pending a full investigation. The technology being demonstrated today poses severe environmental risks and has been developed by misappropriating classified military research. Chen looked between Vicky and Whitmore, clearly unsettled. Perhaps a short recess would be. There's no need for delays, Whitmore interrupted, his control slipping. The demonstration speaks for itself. Look outside precise weather control, exactly as promised. On cue, the clouds directly above the building darkened further, swirling in an unnaturally perfect spiral. Rain began lashing against the windows with mathematical precision. And what happens when that control fails? Vicky challenged. When the atmospheric disruption triggers cascading effects across global weather patterns, your own original research predicted potentially catastrophic outcomes. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Jack's signal. The shutdown sequence was ready. All she needed to do was confirm from her end when Martinez initiated from his. Whitmore must have sensed something was happening. His hand moved to his jacket, withdrawing a small device that looked like a key fob. I had hoped to have your support, Victoria. The board's unanimous approval would have been cleaner, but I'm prepared to proceed regardless. He pressed a button on the device, and immediately security alarms blared throughout the building. Intruder alert protocols activated, announced an automated voice over the PA system. All floors in security lockdown. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies in place? Whitmore asked, his pretense of civility falling away. Your mechanic friend is already being detained, and this demonstration will proceed as planned. Vicky's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. You're too late. Robert, the shutdown sequence has already been initiated. For the first time, genuine concern flashed across Whitmore's face. Impossible. The shutdown requires dual confirmation from 2 Olympus stations. Exactly, Vicky said, allowing herself a small smile as she withdrew her phone and pressed the confirmation button. And thanks to Margaret Harmon's perfect memory, we have both. Outside, the artificially generated storm pattern suddenly faltered, the perfect spiral breaking apart into natural, chaotic weather formations. Thunder continued to roll, but now it was natural thunder, not the precisely timed demonstrations of before. Whitmore lunged for Vicky, but Helen, seemingly frail. Helen, with her tablet and sensible shoes, moved with surprising speed, her tablet swinging in a perfect arc that connected with Whitmore's temple. The former general staggered, collapsing back against the presentation screen. Royal Marines wasn't just my husband, Helen informed him crisply. I served 12 years myself before joining Westfield. The boardroom erupted into chaos, members rising from their seats, security personnel bursting through doors, alarms continuing to wail. Through it all, Vicky maintained her position at the head of the table, her voice cutting through the confusion. Edward, she addressed the chairman directly, I suggest you call the FBI. I believe they'll be very interested in the evidence we've compiled regarding unauthorized use of classified military technology. Chen, bewildered but decisive, nodded and reached for the secure phone on the conference table. Whitmore, recovering from Helen's strike, found himself restrained by two board members who had military backgrounds themselves and recognized the gravity of the situation. This isn't over, Victoria, he snarled. The technology exists. Others will develop it if we don't. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but not with my company's resources, and not without proper environmental safeguards. She turned to the board. That's what this has always been about: responsible innovation, not control at any cost. While security personnel sorted out who should be detained and who was authorized to be present, Vicky's thoughts turned to Jack. The building lockdown would have trapped him in the server room, assuming Whitmore's security hadn't reached him first. She slipped away from the boardroom chaos, heading for the emergency stairs. The elevators would be locked down, but she knew the building well enough to navigate to the 43rd floor. Helen followed, proving remarkably spry for her age as they descended flight after flight of stairs. You knew this might happen, Vicky said between floors. That's why you insisted on coming along. I've been watching Whitmore for months, Helen confirmed. Man's not right in the head. Too many years thinking he's God. They reached the 43rd floor, finding the security doors locked in the emergency protocol. Helen swiped her badge, but the system remained locked. Override failed, she muttered. Whitmore must have revoked my clearance when the alarms triggered. Vicky examined the electronic lock, then the hinges of the door. We don't need the electronics, she decided, pulling a small multi-tool from her pocket. These hinges are standard commercial grade. Working methodically, she removed the hinge pins one by one while Helen kept watch. It took precious minutes, but eventually the door swung free, allowing them access to the floor. The corridor to the server room was ominously quiet. No security personnel. No staff, just empty hallways with emergency lights casting eerie shadows. They moved cautiously, listening for any sound that might indicate Jack's presence or his captors. Server room should be just ahead, Helen whispered, pointing down a side corridor. They turned the corner and froze. The server room door stood open, signs of a struggle evident in the overturned chairs and scattered equipment. Blood droplets marked a path leading away from the room. Vicky's heart clenched. Jack, she breathed, following the blood trail with growing dread. The drops led to a maintenance closet at the end of the hall. Vicky approached cautiously, pushing the door open with her foot, ready for anything. Inside, a security guard lay unconscious, zip-tied with computer cables, and beside him, applying pressure to a bleeding gash on his forehead, sat Jack Harmon. Took you long enough, he said, looking up with a pained smile. Thought I'd have to rescue myself. Relief flooded through Vicky. You're hurt. Head wounds bleed a lot. Jack dismissed the concern. This one came at me when the alarms went off. Wasn't expecting a 62-year-old to remember his combat training. Did the shutdown sequence work? Helen asked, helping Jack to his feet. Perfectly, he confirmed. Martinez confirmed termination of all Olympus protocols. The system is officially dead. Vicky steadied him as he swayed slightly. Whitmore's been detained. The board is calling the FBI. Then we did it, Jack said. his expression showing both relief and disbelief. We actually stopped him. The building's PA system crackled to life. Security lockdown protocols disengaged. Emergency services personnel are on site. All employees, please proceed calmly to designated evacuation points. That's our cue to get out of here, Helen decided. There will be questions, lots of them, but better to answer them outside this building. They made their way to the emergency stairs, Jack moving stiffly but determinedly. The stairwell was filled with employees evacuating, providing perfect cover as they descended amid the crowd. By the time they reached the lobby, police and FBI agents were already establishing a perimeter. Ms. Westfield called a young FBI agent, separating from the group to approach them. Agent Rachel Kim, I believe you have information regarding illegal weather modification activities. Vicky recognized Emily Harmon's friend from her description. We do, she confirmed, and a considerable amount of evidence to support it. My team is already at Silver Creek Airport securing the underground facility, Agent Kim informed them. We'll need detailed statements from both of you. As the agent led them toward a waiting vehicle, Jack caught Vicky's eye. Silver Creek, he said quietly. What happens to it now? That depends, Vicky replied, matching his tone. The airport still needs a manager, one who understands its unique history. Are you offering me my own job back? I'm offering you a partnership, Vicky clarified. Westfield Aerospace needs a research facility focused on the original mission of our atmospheric work climate change mitigation, disaster prevention, environmental protection. Silver Creek would be perfect. Jack considered this as they settled into the FBI vehicle. A partnership, he repeated thoughtfully. Professional or personal? Despite everything, the danger, the injuries, the looming interrogations. Vicky smiled. I was thinking both, unless you have objections. Just one, Jack said, wincing as the vehicle navigated a pothole. We're too old for dramatic rescues and running down staircases. Next time, let's just call the FBI first. Next time, Vicky raised an eyebrow, planning to uncover more decades-old conspiracies. With our luck, Jack laughed, then grew serious. There's still my mother to consider. And Emily, I can't just leave them. Silver Creek is an hour from Sunnybrook, Vicky pointed out. And I believe Westfield has a college internship program that would be perfect for an intelligent young woman studying cybersecurity. The implications settled between them, not a whirlwind romance, but something more measured, more appropriate for people their age who carried complex responsibilities and histories. A partnership, Jack agreed finally. Silver Creek Atmospheric Research has a nice ring to it. Outside, the unnatural storm had fully dissipated, leaving behind normal summer weather, unpredictable, sometimes inconvenient, but following natural patterns that had evolved over millennia. As the FBI vehicle pulled away from Westfield Tower, both Jack and Vicky watched the sky with new appreciation for its untamed power. Some forces weren't meant to be controlled, only respected and protected. It had taken them decades and a second-chance meeting to fully understand that lesson. Now, as they headed toward an uncertain but promising future, the open sky above seemed not just beautiful, but precious, a legacy worth preserving for generations to come. 6 months later, Silver Creek Regional Airport hummed with renewed purpose. The main runway had been repaved, the hangars renovated, and a new research facility constructed where the old North Runway had once been. Local pilots still used the airport for their small aircraft, but now they shared space with atmospheric research planes carrying sophisticated but environmentally safe monitoring equipment. Jack supervised the installation of a weather radar dome, his phone pressed to his ear as he simultaneously checked the calibration readings and spoke with his daughter. The internship is going well, Emily was saying. Ms. Westfield's team is implementing some of my cybersecurity protocols for the new monitoring network. That's great. Jack replied, pride evident in his voice. And thanks for visiting your grandmother yesterday. The care facility says she recognized you immediately. She's having more good days lately, Emily confirmed. The new medication seems to be helping. Oh, and she told me to remind you about dinner tonight. Said Vicky promised to bring that wine from the vineyard you visited last weekend. Jack smiled, watching as a familiar Gulfstream now retrofitted as a research aircraft appeared on the horizon. I haven't forgotten. Your grandmother never lets me forget anything important. After ending the call, Jack walked out to meet the incoming aircraft. The Gulfstream touched down smoothly, taxiing to a stop near the main hangar. Vicky emerged, carrying a briefcase in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. Board meeting go well? Jack asked as she approached. Unanimous approval for the expanded research budget, she confirmed, and not a single artificial thunderclap required. They walked together toward the renovated main building, where Frank was arguing good-naturedly with Rodriguez about proper maintenance procedures for vintage aircraft. The two old veterans had become fast friends over the past months, united by their shared military backgrounds and their loyalty to Jack. Your mother called, Vicky mentioned as they entered Jack's office, once his father's office, now updated with modern technology while preserving its original character. She wants to know if we're still planning that trip to the lake this summer. I told her we'd decide after the new monitoring system is fully operational, Jack replied, setting down his clipboard, which should be by the end of next month, assuming the calibrations check out. Vicky set down the wine bottle and moved behind him, her hands gently kneading the tension from his shoulders. The system will be fine. You've triple-checked everything. Besides, Margaret deserves that trip. So do you. Jack relaxed under her touch, acknowledging the truth in her words. The past 6 months had been intensely busy establishing the new research facility, navigating the complex legalities surrounding the Olympus technology, building a relationship with Vicky that respected their individual needs while creating something meaningful together. They had opted for a pragmatic approach to romance, no grand gestures or dramatic declarations, just the steady building of trust and affection between two people who had seen enough of life to value substance over spectacle. They maintained separate residences but spent most evenings together, sometimes at his house near Silver Creek, sometimes at her apartment in the city. Did you see the climate models from yesterday's flight? Jack asked, gesturing to a stack of reports on his desk. I did, Vicky confirmed. The data supports our approach, small, targeted interventions to support natural recovery processes rather than trying to control weather patterns directly. This was the core of their new mission, using the knowledge gained from Olympus not to manipulate the climate, but to help it heal from decades of human damage. Planting forests in key locations identified by their models, developing localized carbon capture technologies, restoring natural watersheds. It wasn't as flashy as creating thunderstorms on command, but it was sustainable and responsible. Martinez called, Jack mentioned. He's been promoted to Pentagon liaison for climate security. Wants us to brief some senators next month about natural approaches to weather resilience. Politicians, Vicky sighed. They always want quick fixes. This is generational work, which is why we need to convince them, Jack pointed out. If we don't, someone else will come along with promises of technological shortcuts, just like Whitmore did. The mention of Whitmore brought a momentary shadow. The former general was awaiting trial on multiple charges, from attempted murder to misappropriation of classified technology. The case had drawn significant attention from both environmental activists and military oversight committees. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Frank entered, holding a package. Special delivery, he announced. Just arrived by courier. Jack opened the package to find a framed photograph, his father standing proudly in front of Silver Creek's original hangar on opening day, the airport stretching behind him full of possibility. A note accompanied it. Found this while cleaning out Mom's old files. Thought it belonged at the airport. Love. Emily. Jack studied the photograph, seeing in his father's expression the same determination and hope he felt now. He would have approved, he said quietly. Of all of this, Vicky slipped her hand into his. Partners in protecting the sky, she said. Just like you told that reporter last week. Exactly, Jack agreed, setting the photograph on his desk where he could see it daily. Partners in every way that matters. Outside, a summer shower began gentle, natural rain falling from clouds that had formed through normal atmospheric processes. Jack and Vicky watched it together, appreciating its unpredictable beauty, all the more for knowing how close the world had come to losing it. Some partnerships were written in the sky itself, not perfect. Sometimes stormy, but enduring and life-giving. Like the one they had found together at Silver Creek, where a chance emergency landing had led two aging warriors to their most important mission yet. The rain falls differently when you've seen how easily it could be controlled. Every natural storm becomes a gift imperfect, unpredictable, and entirely precious. At 62, Jack Harmon never expected to fight another war. At 58, Victoria Westfield never thought she'd find an ally in the man who once opposed her father's ambitions. Yet here they stand among the hangars of Silver Creek, gray-haired warriors who discovered that some battles don't end with retirement, and some partnerships begin with emergency landings. They lost the comfortable quietude of their separate lives. They surrendered the luxury of looking away, but in exchange, they salvaged something greater, a sky that answers to no one. Weather patterns that follow ancient rhythms instead of corporate agendas, and the unexpected comfort of finding someone who understands both your past and your purpose. The monitoring equipment still hums beneath the airfield, now repurposed to heal rather than control. Margaret's lucid days come more frequently, as if unburdening long-held secrets has lightened her mind's load. And sometimes, when thunder rolls across Silver Creek, two people who've earned their scars look up together, respecting the power they refuse to claim. Perhaps the truest victory isn't controlling the storm, but having someone steady beside you while you weather it.